Stop right now. Before you scroll away thinking this doesn't apply to you, let me tell you something. You've been lied to. They told you passion fades with age. They told you desire has an expiration date, and guess what? They were dead wrong. Because what if I told you the best sex of your life could be happening in your 50s and it has nothing to do with looks, youth, or six-pack abs? It's an inside job, baby. Now let's get into it. By the time you hit your 50s, you're done with the guessing game. You know what you're done and you're not you for USC for us, confidence, success, and when you and that changes of a bang in this bedroom. Because let's burrow must have a spent ukyanga use taptung aran ukati sakungus and oxobs and warang about what somebody else that. Dada tagas took found the rat bubble white audition for Oprah validation for Oprah. But has the thong when you spun your love so can commotion to fall to their success and then you're at your 50s and something shafts. It's like one day you just walk up and say, I'm done, you skunk. You say up a large song for tukung up spot. You stop waiting for someone else to tell you that you're beautiful or desirable or worthy because you already know it. You feel it in your bones, and that's when everything changes. Because confidence is not about looking a certain way. It's not about a number on a scale or the way society tells you you're supposed to be sexy. Confidence is knowing that you don't need external validation to feel incredible in your own skin. And that kind of confidence, it is magnetic. It is powerful, and it is the biggest turn on there is. And let's be clear, confidence doesn't mean you wake up every day feeling like a supermodel. It doesn't mean you never have insecurities. It means that even on the days you don't feel perfect, you still show up like you are. Because the success popular, the world and the ones with color pop up the butters, the good ones walk on it, ramen on up, the good ones hunt shrunk themselves, done to muck others come to dump mucket. They're the ones who carry themselves with a quiet kind of power, like they know something the rest of the world hasn't figured out yet. And you know what they know? They know that pleasure isn't something you deserve only if you're young, or if you're a certain size. Of your mud some impossible beauty stank that was never to bugan what? No, that plujko is a birthright. That chore is a birthright, that for long just not something you have to another something you already water of just for bong, huh? And when you finally understand that, sure to blow and shock blow and understand that, sure see a porting back. Huh, you see a world, you say yourself among a your fool, you see a among a statics purpose song. And that's when Antamashi stops bong, a transaction and starts bong something, dupper, something that meet you for Monday and you full more over than you wiki have buffer. Cause I'm gonna tell you something confident. That's about how you carry yourself enough. That's but you spoke up one yo just to quite buffer. That's where you walk talk a left flutter, tuck up spots like you belong, cause you're the. That's just where you see among your let maka the poplar comforted because finally and today your lot was not the smantaba small. And when you brung that ankaja on a jorala punch ups, when you brung that selfish on a polojotaka on a ha, amandam don shankon kondavang cho on a chon tamashi. That's one thing's got chat, one thing's got rule cho chu. Because nothing another kunga sucks than our person US and doesn't use it kumushin to faulty than on scan. And as a cell bus put you to suck off, you don't have to try to bark confident. You just have to unlearn you repeat thing that told you about what you just have to remember on you up with us world magic got tune fun sir. That's not something you find. It's something you reclam. Gunners does a proving something to someone. Does Nirush no poman sa angzuri? It's not about impressing, it's about fulong that freedom that's what magic happens. Think about earth. Anya twentas and tutors was das invisible scuba das pushka hangang a figure mokanya prung at what? War the lakma, war the star, and let's born is have to sum you one of an this moment. Yo, what a buzz upon in your heart, and a los on your motherman ever signed your boxing locketh with some kind of test you had to pass. And that calls intimacy beefathavan has a chance to bugan, but something shuffs when you're at your 50s. The weight of other people's expectations starts to fall away. You stop treating intimacy like a performance and start treating it like an experience. You stop obsessing over how it looks and start caring about how it feels. And suddenly, for the first time in maybe your entire life, you're free. Free from the pressure to prove something, free from the need to be perfect, free from the nonsense idea that passion belongs to the young. You realize that real intimacy isn't about trying to impress, it's about showing up fully, completely as yourself, and that changes everything. Because when you let go of the pressure, the connection gets deeper. The experience gets richer. It's not about racing to some finish line or checking a box. It's not about meeting some made-up expectation of how things are supposed to go. It's about slowing down, being present. Actually, for long over sunsupan instead of rushing through. And that is this kind of intimacy most popular done exporp unso until the finally let go of a verbung that had to ba. Yes, so when you're younger, intimacy can sometimes feel like a competition. Like something you have to win. That's prushka to empress to cup up to make sure everything locks and falls as sudden wa. But when you got older, your role is something. It's to one's that let's take perfect. Dugus one's that full role. And you know what happens when you say world over 10 down. You send on young yourself on well, you never did before. Yourself thinking about how you're bunked over instead focusing on what you act out to near you come Oliver. And when you bring that kind of unkuja, and it's the bodrum this whole expert on the shafts, it's no longer about proving and fang, it's about exputa. It's about shoving yourself pabuch into expert on the plug on your terms. And let's not forget, when you remove the pressure, you also remove the fear of not being enough, the fear of getting it wrong, the fear of not meeting some unrealistic standard that was never real in the first place. And when fear leaves the room, intimacy gets better. I've got rucha, dupo, mafsa long on was enough of a majipnu, because has truth. Vast intimacy doesn't come from trung hada. It doesn't come from its tongue satanwa. It doesn't come from chisang some impossible out of a passionate suppositable. It comes from litanga. It comes from trusting yourself. It comes from understanding that when you see trung to bust socks and just step boom present of your be thong chanjas. And isn't that what your freedom falls like? Kuto, Prushka, no anxiety, no squap to fula. Just yon moment exparp on song your frep sense up on what that sunglo thought about what it's rather wrong, chitabad, not for nut. Because the moment you let go of this Prushka is this moment you finally got to exparp on so what intimacy was meant to be all along. On your twentos, you're worried about home, your totos, you're worried about dong or fortas, it's about kunux fus about kunux fun. When intimacy stops bong, a checklist and starts bong and expert on so that's when it guts gets and that's till nobody tells you. Raw passion, this con that cups you up at night to feel something in your soul, it doesn't come from full on some scrupt. It doesn't come from up the end of it and bust chill. South comes from kunak to man and kunak panas and about oh, you're about here for. When you're younger, there's this constant noise in your head. You're thinking about what your body luck was started pusanas kung would get you down at the root. Of the also enough to some reductive souls, uberished vision of passion that was sold to your mothers and magazines. But on your fifth does that nose starts to fud and what's chiam your object, chatty, for yourself. Your rollers that roll on Tamasi is and about pumansa, us about presenza, and presenza, that's everything. Because when you're for the present, when you're actual the then, this moment for long over living instead of where on whatever it be. That's when intimacy becomes something bibble, something that was full, all over, instead of just going to smuppins. And let's talk about the smuppins for a second, because so many people are sponges and do goods just going through them. Fulangs returning what the Thankuka Supuzu touching some version of Kunakpan that doesn't have a full roll to them, and the wonder what it falls umta. It falls like something is musung, it falls like to don't ever be doing a right, but it still doesn't fall right. But then something shifts. You realize it's not about checking boxes. It's not about following some outdated idea of what intimacy is supposed to be. It's about connection. And connection doesn't happen when you're trying to be perfect. It doesn't happen when you're stuck in your head, overthinking, worrying about whether you're doing it right. It happens when you stop thinking and start feeling. When you stop trying to control the moment and just let yourself be in it. And that's the gift of getting older. You finally understand that intimacy isn't about looking sexy. It's about feeling connected. It's about locking eyes with someone and knowing you're safe. It's about laughter in between kisses. It's about the kind of touch that isn't rushed, that isn't forced, that isn't about obligation or expectation, but about presence. And here's the thing, when you're connected, really connected, the physical part of intimacy gets better. Because it's not just about mechanics anymore. It's not just about going through the motions, it's about energy. It's about emotion. It's about something that goes beyond just the physical and taps into something much deeper. You're no longer just doing the thing, you're experiencing it, you're feeling every moment. You're allowing yourself to actually be in your body instead of judging it. And that shift, that changes everything. Because at the end of the day, the best intimacy isn't about what's happening on the surface. It's about what's happening underneath. It's about trust. It's about comfort. It's about knowing you don't have to prod in the bum. Some impossible is done. Because what really makes us and how you can moment. It's how you fall on earth. And once you understand that, once you truly understand that, you're not go back to song intimacy somewhere again. You're not trying to fit into someone else's expectations anymore. You listen to your body, you honor what feels right, and that level of self-awareness, that's the gateway to next level pleasure. Because, let's be honest, how many years did you spend worrying about what other people thought of you? About whether you were attractive enough, desirable enough, doing it right enough? How many times did you ignore what you wanted because you were too focused on what somebody else wanted? That's what happens when we grow up in a world that teaches us to shrink ourselves, to fit into molds we never chose, to prioritize looking good over feeling good. But when you hit your 50s, something inside you shifts. You start realizing that the only person who truly needs to love your body is you. That the only validation that actually matters is the kind you give yourself, and suddenly you stop seeking pleasure. You stop treating intimacy like something you have to get right, and start treating it like something that's meant to feel good. And that's where the real power is. Because when you stop trying to be what the world expects and start honoring what your body expects, you start experiencing intimacy in a way you never have before. It stops being about performance. It stops being about obligation. It stops being about checking a box, following a script, doing what you think you're supposed to do. It starts being about what feels right, what feels good, what makes you feel alive. And that's what most people don't realize until later in life. That real pleasure, real intimacy doesn't come from trying to be someone else's fantasy. It comes from being deeply, unapologetically in tune with your own desires, your own needs, your own rhythms, sensations, and experiences. And when you give yourself permission to listen to your body instead of judging it, that's when everything changes. Because your body is always talking to you. It's telling you what feels good. It's telling you what it needs, what it craves, what makes it feel safe, what makes it feel electric. But for so many years, we're taught to ignore it, to override it, to focus more on how it looks than how it feels. And you know what? That's exhausting. Spending your life chasing some impossible version of perfection, that's not sexy. That's tiring. But you know what is sexy? Freedom, comfort. Being so in tune with yourself that you don't need permission to take up space, to enjoy, to receive, to fully experience the moment without hesitation. And that's the beauty of getting older. You stop forcing things that don't feel right. You stop tolerating things that don't serve you. You start setting boundaries, not just in life, but in intimacy. And when you do that, when you finally say, I'm done pretending, I'm done performing, I'm done making myself smaller so other people feel bigger, that's when you tap into something real, something deeper. And let's talk about that for a second. Because real intimacy isn't just about sex. It's about the way you show up. It's about knowing what works for you, what doesn't, what makes you feel safe, what turns you on, what turns you off. It's about understanding your body, your rhythms, your preferences, your limits. And not just understanding them, but honoring them. Because let's be honest, when you're younger, you put up with a lot. You settle. You go along with things because you don't want to disappoint someone. You ignore your discomfort, you push past your instincts, you do what you think is expected instead of what actually feels right. But when you grow into yourself, when you step into your full power, that stops. You don't force anything. You don't chase anything. You don't perform for anyone. You experience, you feel, you listen. And when you do that, when you trust your own body enough to let it lead instead of always trying to control it, that's when intimacy stops being something you do and starts being something you truly live. Let's be real, when you know yourself emotionally, you show up differently. You communicate, you're present, you're intentional. And that deep emotional connection, it's the key to the most fulfilling sex of your life. Because here's the thing, when you're younger, you don't always understand yourself. You're still figuring things out, still trying to make sense of who you are, what you need, what truly makes you happy. And for a lot of people, that uncertainty bleeds into their relationships, into their intimacy, into the way they show up in those deeply personal moments. They go through the motions, hoping that if they just do the right things, they'll eventually feel the right things. But in your 50s, you're past that. You've lived enough, loved enough to know that real intimacy isn't about technique. It's about connection. And connection isn't just about physical chemistry. It's about emotional clarity. It's about knowing yourself so well that you can show up fully, without fear, without hesitation, without the need to pretend or perform. Because, let's be honest, when you're not emotionally secure, it shows in the way you second guess yourself. It shows in the way you hold back, afraid to be vulnerable, afraid to ask for what you really want, afraid to let someone see you fully. And you know what? That fear kills intimacy faster than anything else. It builds walls where there should be windows. It creates distance where there should be closeness. It makes something that should feel freeing feel like something you have to work for, something you have to earn. But when you finally know yourself, when you've done the work, when you've healed the wounds, when you've learned how to love yourself without conditions, that's when everything shifts. You stop needing someone else to complete you because you already feel whole. You stop looking for someone to validate you because you already know your worth. And when you bring that kind of energy into intimacy, it's different, it's deeper, it's real. Because here's the truth, when you're emotionally mature, you communicate differently. You say what you mean, you ask for what you want. You don't dance around your needs, hoping someone will just guess them. You own them. You invite the other person to meet you where you are instead of shrinking yourself down to meet them. And that changes everything. Because the best intimacy isn't just about physical touch, it's about emotional safety. It's about knowing you can be fully yourself, flaws, scars, imperfections and all, and still be wanted, still be desired, still be loved. And when you feel safe enough to be that vulnerable, that's when you experience a kind of passion that has nothing to do with age and everything to do with depth. And let's talk about depth for a second, because there's a kind of connection that goes beyond the surface. It's the kind of connection that makes you feel seen, heard, understood in a way that's almost electric. It's when you don't have to hide, don't have to hold back, don't have to filter yourself or shrink yourself or worry about whether you're too much or not enough. It's when you can just be. And that is what makes intimacy in your 50s better than it's ever been. Because you're not wasting time on shallow connections. You're not giving energy to relationships that don't feed your soul. You're not settling for anything less than what makes you feel alive. And when you find someone who meets you on that level, who sees you, who feels you, who connects with you on every level, not just the physical, that's when intimacy becomes more than just an experience. It becomes transformation. So here's the deal, sex in your 50s. It's not just good, it's better. But only if you believe it can be. Because at the end of the day, the best intimacy doesn't start in the body, it starts in the mind. And that, my friends, is an inside job.